Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Bright. PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. Make sure to follow us on social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and X. You can watch and listen to full episodes on Spotify and YouTube. So round one is in the books for the college football playoff. And let's just take a look. Quick rewind of the results on the previous Friday night. Alabama won 34-24. Then following that, Miami was able to win 10-3, a kind of a low-scoring back-and-forth game, defensive slugfest between the two sides as the Hurricanes get the 10-3 win over the Aggies on the road. So really impressive. And the rest of the games were kind of blowouts later that night. You had Ole Miss 41-10 over Tulane. Very similar result as they did the first time in their game. And then the late game, 51-34. Oregon gets the win over James Madison. So my biggest thought is I obviously want to dive into the Miami game. You know, you look at the stats for the quarterbacks. 14 for 20 Carson Beck was for only one touchdown. Reed had 25 for 39 and 2 interceptions. Ended up to be pretty costly, especially the one at the end. But yeah, it was a defensive battle, and I kind of anticipated that Miami was going to win, but I am a little bit surprised that it was a low-scoring affair between the two sides. Kind of seemed like, you know, A&M had 21 first downs compared to Miami's 12, and obviously penalties were a little bit of a factor. 3 for 12 on third downs was Miami. Texas A&M was 8 for 18, and time of possession, A&M had the advantage with 33 minutes of time of possession compared to Miami's 26. So just kind of goes to show us that anything can flip at any moment. But that was definitely the most interesting game from my perspective out of all the games that happened. Although I will say Alabama and Oklahoma, that was also pretty entertaining as well on Friday night. A 10-point game. Kind of seemed like Oklahoma was the stronger team early on in that game, and then Alabama just pulled away late, especially in the second half. But those two were really good games. And the other two games were blowout games. And kind of segueing into the next section, or the next segment, I should say, is do these group of 6 teams deserve to be in the playoff? And, you know, I kind of go back and forth on it because I do think because you're all one level at the FBS level that you should have the representation, that if you just completely closed out the group of 6, then it would just kind of feel like another subdivision as the FCS. So I get that in that regard, but also there is a clear talent difference between a group of 6 school and a Power 4 school. It just is what it is. You know, you have more resources at the Power 4 level compared to the group of 6 level. It just happens. That's just kind of how college football was constructed, especially in the NIL era. It's just gonna be what it's gonna be. And I think you kind of saw with the results, and we saw it a little bit last year too, is these just blowout games in the first round. And yeah, some people are saying, would it have been better if Notre Dame was in that spot? Probably. You know, and I know Nick Saban kind of talked about how it kind of seems like the group of 5 is kind of seems like group of 5 is kind of the AAA of college football. And I sort of get that, but also, like, I don't know. I'm trying to find I want to find the quote from Nick Saban. You know, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. Yeah, Nick Saban saying that group of 5 should have a separate college football playoff. And I don't know how I feel about that. I do think he also mentioned about, like, if you're not a top 15 team, you shouldn't be in the playoff. I understand that because I do think while it is a lot harder, there is potential possibility where you could be legitimately a top 15 team as a group of 6 school. Now, maybe it's a little bit harder, and maybe it doesn't exist because we have the committee, and the committee just decides who they want in the top 12, and maybe they're never going to put them at a top 15. So then you would hardly ever see, and then you kind of go back to the rarity that there was in the group when we had a 14 playoff. Although Cincinnati was able to make it as a group of 5 school, but also different era, different time. I get that. So, but I know I've talked about this before, but there's going to be changes to this playoff format. You already saw the ACC committing to changing the tiebreakers following this year into 2026. So there's going to be some changes. I expect even more changes compared to last year where, this year we kind of just fixed the seating and called it all that. I think we're going to expand to 16, whether we like it or not. That's just how the sport's moving. And yes, you're always going to have that team that it feels like, oh, we should have been left in, or we shouldn't have been taken out. We deserved a spot in the playoff. Well, sorry, not sorry. I mean, that's just the sport. College football is always going to be like that, and it's not going to ever change. And you're not going to do a 64-team bracket like college basketball does because, one, you don't have the teams and you don't have the frequency to play that many games. Just kind of how it is. Just calling it how it is. But, yeah, so then we'll take a look at the quarterfinal games. So Oregon's going to face Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl on January 1st. In the Rose Bowl on January 1st, it's going to be Alabama taking on the number 1 overall team in the country, the Indiana Hoosiers. The All-State Sugar Bowl is going to have number 6 Ole Miss take on number 3 Georgia. Rematch. We'll take it. And then in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic on December 31st is going to be Miami and Ohio State. So, I mean, I do think those should be really good games. All of them should, I think, are going to be competitive games. Of course, one of them is probably ought to be a blowout. That's just how sports is. It is what it is. But, my ideal format for a college football playoff is probably, I don't think anyone would really be calling for this, but I wouldn't even mind if the 12-team playoff or like an 8-team playoff, if it had the BCS format rather than this committee of because I feel like a lot of people gave a lot of flack for the BCS, but that was when they had to pick 2 teams. So now that you have a larger pool, you kind of can make it more reasonable and kind of remove the bias without the computer rankings to make it have a little bit more sense. Now, it's never going to 100% make sense because someone's going to complain. I'm going on a tangent about that, but that's just what I would do. I would probably prefer an 8-team playoff, but I kind of like a BCS format. I feel like it makes more sense, and you don't have these problems with the committee where you're ranking Notre Dame for 5 straight weeks ahead of Miami, and then you flip it at the last second, whatever. But let me just go into a couple of quick predictions going into these quarterfinals. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with the game that goes before it first. So Miami and Ohio State. Miami, great win. As I mentioned, great win. It kind of seems like Mario Cristobal has really changed the tide. I had a lot of question marks about Mario Cristobal. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of question marks is can he win these big games? Can he go and make the playoff? Because he always kind of loses these stinkers. And, by the skin of their teeth, they're able to crawl their way into the playoff. But, I mean, it is what it is. They made the playoff, guys. They made it. So, and they won a game. So can you really argue with them leaving out Notre Dame and putting in Miami? You can't now. They won 10-3. And Notre Dame lost to Texas A&M. Notre Dame lost to Miami. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm blabbing on about Notre Dame, but let's take a look at this next matchup. Miami and Ohio State. I got Ohio State. I think I kind of have a feeling Ohio State's just going to make a run all the way to the championship game and probably rematch with Indiana. Or potentially face another team that I'll talk about in just a little bit. But, yeah. So, I got Ohio State in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Cotton Bowl champs. Next up, we got the Capital One Orange Bowl. Oregon versus Texas Tech. And I like Texas Tech. I think their defense is elite. Really good. And Oregon did give up a lot of points, 34 points to be exact, to JMU. I got the Oregon Ducks, though. I'm going to go and roll with Oregon. And here's why. The reason why I like Dante Moore threw for 4 touchdowns against JMU. Did have 2 interceptions as well. I get that. But Oregon has only losses have really, it's Indiana. That's it. You lost to Indiana, who's the number 1 team in the country. So, I feel like Texas Tech, they're going to struggle probably offensively. And I just like what Oregon does offensively. I think this is just going to be the year that Oregon is going to make a deep run in the playoffs. I probably have them either. The winner of the Oregon-Indiana game is probably going to go to it's kind of spoiling my picks a little bit. I'm all over the place today. Sorry. It's been a long day. But yeah, I got the Ducks over Texas Tech. Texas Tech hasn't played in a while. Oregon's a little bit fresh. Having that first round game, they're going to be ready. Now, next up, the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. Alabama versus number 1 Indiana. Alabama got a gritty win over Oklahoma. Respect. But Indiana, I got the Hoosiers. Kurt Cignetti's going to get his team ready. Obviously, Cignetti coached a while back under Nick Saban as a wide receivers coach. Knows that program, even though it's a little bit different under Kalen DeBoer. He knows what he's doing. Kurt Cignetti. Hop on the Cignetti train because they're going to win. If anything, it's going to be a blowout. I think it could potentially be this one. So give me the Hoosiers. Then I got Georgia and Ole Miss. I thought Pete Golding in his first game against Tulane was a dominant win. 41-10. John Summerall will be done at Tulane. He's heading over to Florida. It's a great story after Lane Kiffin took over or packed his bags and headed over to LSU. I just don't know if they're going to hold everything together to continue in the playoffs, especially against a team like Georgia. Now, it's not the Georgia teams of the past. And Georgia pretty much boat raced this Alabama team, so Georgia is looking hot right now. This one I think could be a classic, especially since both these teams played earlier. But I know Trinidad Chambliss got a little bit hurt. He was hurt on the first drive, but then he pretty much looked good after that. So did he really get hurt? Yeah. I mean, just kind of a nick there. But and Lacey, he's just a dog running back for the Rebels. A dog running back, sellout crowd, biggest crowd in Ole Miss history. A sellout crowd in their first ever playoff game. A lot rolling for them, but I just think Georgia's the more experienced team at this point, especially in a playoff game. So I'm going with the Bulldogs. So that would set up for the next matchups to be Oregon versus Indiana and Ohio State versus Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. Pretty good if you ask me. That's pretty good if you ask me. So, as I mentioned, we can kind of talk a little bit about the playoffs and what I think they are and how I'm kind of reacting to them as of right now. A lot of people are going to complain. I know Kirk Herbstreit didn't really like the playoffs last year because he wants to call good games. Everyone wants to call good games and wants to experience good games, but you're going to have these blowouts. That's kind of what you're going to get in this current format. And, it's just going to change every single year with realignment and all these changes that are happening, going on and moving forward. It just is what it is. You asked for it, so you got it. So you got to have to deal with the kind of repercussions and changes that come with it. That's kind of my thoughts right there. I know this one's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, especially with the holidays. There's a lot going on. I just want to make sure I get some time in here to talk about my thoughts in the world of college football, but expect a little bit more as we move along the way and head into the new year. So hope everyone's enjoying happy holidays and happy new year. Of course, happy new year. 2026 is going to be a great one. So I can feel it. I have a lot of high expectations and goals. I'm excited for it. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the Tyler Bright and Early podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Bright, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football center.